Hi, guys. We're back with First Chapter Fridays, and today we're going to take a look at Rot and Ruin by Jonathan Mayberry. He's a pretty great author, especially if you like a little bit of gore with your reading. So I thought this would be a great one to lead us into Halloween. Rot and Ruin. Benny Amura couldn't hold a job, so he took to killing. It was the family business. He barely liked his family, and by family he meant his older brother Tom, and he definitely didn't like the idea of business or work. The only part of the deal that sounded like it might be fun was the actual killing. He'd never done it before. Sure, he'd gone through 100 simulations in gym class and in the scouts, but they never let kids do any real killing, not before they hit 15. Why not? He asked his scoutmaster, a fat guy named Feeney, who used to be a TV weatherman back in the day. Benny was 11 at the time and obsessed with zombie hunting. How come you don't let us whack some real zombs? Because killing's the sort of thing you should learn from your folks, said Feeney. I don't have any folks, Benny countered. My mom and dad died at first night. Ouch. Sorry, Benny, I forgot. Point is, you got family of some kind, right? I guess I'm Mr. Freaking Perfect Tom Imura for a brother, but I don't want to learn anything from him. Feeney had stared at him. Wow, I didn't know you were related to him. He's your brother, huh? Well, there's your answer, kid. Nobody better to teach you the art of killing than a professional killer like Tom Imura. Feeney paused and licked his lips nervously. I guess being his brother and all, you've seen him take down a lot of zombs. No, Benny said with huge annoyance. He never lets me watch. Really? That's odd. Well, ask him when you turn 13. Benny had asked on his 13th birthday, and Tom had said no. Again, it wasn't a discussion, just no. That was more than 2 years ago, and now Benny was 6 weeks past his 15th birthday. He had 4 more weeks' grace to find a paying job before town ordinance cut his rations by half. Benny hated being in that position, and if one more person gave him the 15 and free speech, he was going to scream. He hated that as much as when people saw someone doing hard work and they said crap like, holy smokes, he's going at that like he's 15 and out of food. Like it was something to be happy about, something to be proud of, working your butt off for the rest of your life. Benny didn't see what the fun was in that. Okay, maybe it was marginally okay because it meant only half days of school from then on, but still, it sucked. His buddy Lou Chong said it was a sign of the growing cultural oppression that was driving post-apocalyptic humanity towards acceptance of a new slave state. Benny had no freaking idea what Chong meant or if there was even meaning in anything he said, but he nodded in agreement because the look on Chong's face always made it seem like he knew exactly what it was. At home, before he even finished eating his dessert, Tom had said, I want to talk to you about joining the family business. Are you going to chew my head off again? Benny stared venomous death at Tom and said, very clearly and distinctly, I don't want to work in the family business. I'll take that as a no then. Don't you think it's a little late now to try and get me all excited about it? I asked you a zillion times to... You asked me to take you out on kills. Right. And every time I did, you... Tom cut him off. There's a lot more to what I do, Benny. Yeah, there probably is, and maybe I would have thought the rest was something I could deal with, but you never let me see the cool stuff. There's nothing cool about killing, Tom said sharply. That is where you're talking about killing zombs, Benny fired back. That stalled the conversation. Tom stalked out of the room and banged around the kitchen for a while, and Benny threw himself down on the couch. Tom and Benny never talked about zombies. They had every reason to, but they never did. Benny couldn't understand it. He hated zombies. Everybody hated them, though with Benny, it was a white-hot, consuming hatred that went back to his very first memory. Because it was his first memory, a nightmare image that was there every night when he closed his eyes. It was an image that was seared into him, even though it was something he had seen as a tiny child. Dad and Mom. Mom screaming, running towards Tom, shoving a squirming Benny, all of 18 months, into Tom's arms, screaming and screaming, telling him to run, while the thing that had been Dad pushed its way through the bedroom door that Mom had tried to block with a chair and lamps and anything else she could find. Benny remembered Mom screaming words, but the memory was so old and he had been so young that he didn't remember what any of them were. Maybe there were no words. Maybe it was just her screaming. Benny remembered the wet heat on his face as Tom's tears fell on him as they climbed out the bedroom window. They lived in a ranch-style house, one story. The window emptied out into a yard that was pulsing with red and blue police lights. There were more shouts and screams. The neighbors, the cops, maybe the army. Thinking back, Benny figured it was probably the army and the constant popping of gunfire near and far away. But of all of it, Benny remembered a single last image. As Tom clutched him to his chest, Benny looked over his brother's shoulder at the bedroom window. Mom leaned out of the window, screaming at them as Dad's pale hands reached out of the shadows of the room and dragged her back out of sight. That was Benny's oldest memory. If there had been older memories, then that image might have burned them away. Because he'd been so young, the whole thing was little more than a collage of pictures and noises. But over the years, Benny had burned his brain to reclaim every fragment, to recall meaning and sense to every scrap of what he could recall. Benny remembered the hammering sound vibrating against his chest that was Tom's panicked heartbeat, and the long wail that was his own inarticulate cry for his mom and his dad. He hated Tom for running away. He hated that Tom hadn't stayed and helped Mom. He hated what their dad had become on that first night all those years ago, just as he hated what Dad had turned Mom into. In his mind, they were no longer Mom and Dad. They were the things that had killed them, Zombs, and he hated them with an intensity that made the sun feel cold and small. "Dude, what is it with you and Zombs?" Chong once asked him. "You act like the Zombs have a personal grudge against you." "What? I'm supposed to have fuzzy bunny feelings for them?" Benny had snapped back. "No," Chong had conceded, "but a little perspective would be nice. I mean, everybody hates Zombs." "You don't." Chong shrugged his bony shoulders and his dark eyes had darted away. "Everybody hates Zombs." The way Benny saw it, when your first memory was of zombies killing your parents, then you had a license to hate them as much as you wanted. He tried to explain this to Chong, but his friend wouldn't be drawn back into the conversation. A few years ago, when Benny found out that Tom was a zombie hunter, he hadn't been proud of his brother. As far as he was concerned, if Tom really had what it took to be a zombie hunter, he would have had the guts to help Mom. Instead, Tom had run away and left Mom to die, to become one of them. Tom came back into the living room, looked at the remains of the dessert on the table, then looked at Benny on the couch. "The offer still stands," he said. "If you want to do what I do, then I'll take you on as an apprentice. I'll sign the papers so that you can still get full rations." Benny gave him a long, withering stare. "I'd rather be eaten by Zombs than have you as my boss," Benny said. Tom sighed, turned, and trudged upstairs. After that, they didn't talk to each other for days.